Looking deeply inside nature through the magnifying glass of science, we're extracting principles, processes, and materials that are forming the very basis of our design methodology, translating nature outwardly with vector into technology, from synthetic constructs that emulate biological materials to computational methods that resemble neural processes. Nature is driving design. Design is also driving nature. In realms of genetics, regenerative medicine, and synthetic biology, designers are growing novel technologies not foreseen or anticipated by nature. Today I will explore the emerging field of bionics that seeks to employ electromechanics to emulate or extend animal or human physiological function. Bionic researchers contemplate a future in which technology will no longer comprise separate lifeless tools from our minds and bodies. Too often, today's tech comprises unsophisticated tools that do not fundamentally embrace who we are. Tools that require user manuals, instruction books, training courses. Today I'll contemplate a future in which technology will embody us and we will embody it. My brain does not require a user manual to use my hand. My hand is embodied in mind, and my mind in hand, an integration with self without boundary or seam. The bionics field imagines a future in which our tools have been carefully integrated in with our nature. A future in which what is biological and what is not, what is human and what is not, what is nature and what is not, will be forever blurred. Ironically, we understand the things we make more than the things we are. Years ago, with my colleague Bob Dennis and I, we built a robotic swimming robot powered by living muscle tissue. And we call it an actin-myosin machine. The fish swam through its own media comprising oxygen and nutrients. And because the science of organ culture was not yet advanced, our machine died after only 48 hours. But in the future, when an architect designs and builds, she will have an extraordinary understanding of not only synthetics, but also biologic constructs. And she will ask, in this part of the device, the machine, should it be synthetic polymer or should it be skin? In this part of the machine, should it be shape memory or skeletal muscle? So in that future, hybrid machines such as our actin-myosin machine will not die, but will live on as part of the built environment, our built world, a new nature. To achieve such an integration between our bodies and minds and synthetics requires the design of what I call extreme interfaces. Today I'll talk about electrical and mechanical extreme interfaces. I'll give examples of research that's going on in the field of bionics, and then talk about what will become the clinical impact. Bionics has defined me, my physicality. In 1982, I was in a mountaineering accident on Mount Washington, New Hampshire, and I suffered severe frostbite to my lower legs. After months of effort, my medical team gave up the struggle to save my biological limbs, and they were both amputated. So today I stand entirely supported by artificial structures. I'm nuts and bolts from the knee down. And so I'm made of titanium carbon composite and silicone. So after the accident, I dreamed of climbing again. Sorry about that. So here you see me clinging to a rock wall for dear life. So I did so by designing specialized prosthetic limbs. This limb enabled me to climb very narrow rock fissures. I could wedge this fin-like blade of a prosthesis into a rock fissure, rotate my leg, extend my knee, and make progress up the mountain. I also climbed ice walls. This is a spiked foot where the pylon is welded directly into a plate of the crampon. I can stand here all day long without calf fatigue. It's like standing on a horizontal sidewalk. So from this experience, I realized the extraordinary capacity of bionics. This is my first experience in augmenting my physicality with electromechanics. And I actually climbed it better at a more advanced level after my accident with artificial limbs that I achieved before the accident. And as a young man, I envisioned a future where technology is so advanced the human-machine interaction so sophisticated that we could imagine a world in which there is without disability. So today I'm going to talk about two research programs, one in new minds and a second in new bodies, to give you a glimpse of what that future may look like. So starting off, new minds. So as we all know, brain conditions are a major, major healthcare problem. From schizophrenia, severe depression, to anxiety, many of us in society have conditions. Imagine a future where we have tools where we can focally, with high specificity, target specific brain cell types and treat conditions. So this is very complicated because the brain is complex. From the exterior, the brain doesn't look that impressive. It's just a few kilograms of wrinkled flesh. But it, mediates everything so much about us, what we think, what we feel. And of course, when you go inside the brain, you see this extraordinary complexity, billions of cells and connections between cells. What makes the brain very, very complicated is that there's thousands to tens of thousands of different cell types. And in science, we don't yet understand what these cells actually do. So today, to treat conditions, we're bathing this very complex biological computer with a chemical with often unfavorable side effects. So what about taking a different approach, an optogenetic approach that's more precise? Imagine if we could put, if you will, solar panels on each of the brain cell types that have pathology, and then be able to turn off cells on and off electrically by light. This is the work of Edward Boyden and colleagues at MIT in a field called optogenetics. So how does it work? What are they doing? So this is a unicelled organism, algae, that swims towards light to enhance photosynthesis. And how it works is there's an eye spot organelle that you'll see in a moment. There's a membrane, and the eye spot has a light-sensitive protein. And in fact, when blue light is shown on the membrane, these pores open, allowing positively charged particles to pass through the pore. And that's the signal for the motor that drives the animal in the direction of light. What if we could do the same thing with certain brain cells by taking that same light-sensitive protein, have it expressed, and shining light across the brain, and only targeting very, very specific cell types? So what was done by these researchers is they take a DNA strand and using a gene therapy strategy, they implant it, and that DNA strand manufactures the light-sensitive protein. And again, it's analogous to putting solar panels across the cell. So there you see solar panels across the cell. Now when you shine a certain frequency of light, the cell type is activated electrically. So many applications. Edward Boyden and group are developing implants, of course, to modulate the light signal within the brain to turn it on and off cells. Many applications, I'll only talk about one application. Seeing impaired. Here's the anatomy of the visual system. You have the receptor cells, the bipolar cells, and so on and so forth. So in certain pathologies, the photoreceptor cells are impaired. So there's an inability to go from light to neural information. So imagine applying this optogenetic approach, putting these light-sensitive proteins on the bipolar cells. Now the organism can, in fact, exploit visual information. Here's an experiment. Here's a mouse. The mouse is trying to get into the channel to get onto a dry platform. The mouse is essentially blind, and it's doing it by brute force search, by feeling its way. Now, after the optogenetic treatment, now the animal can exploit visual information, swims directly into the channel. Extraordinary work by Edward Boyden and colleagues. So Bionics is also thinking about not only new minds, but new bodies. Researchers are advancing biophysical models that describe how we stand, walk, and run. What are the muscles doing? What are the tendons doing? How is the limb being controlled neurally? And these models are motivating the construction and design of bionic limbs. This is a bionic-powered ankle-foot prosthesis. I'm wearing them here. Inside of the device is a motor that represents the muscles that span the ankle. And there's also springs that represent the various ligaments and tendons that span the ankle. And of course, sensors and microprocessors that fundamentally capture how the spinal cord is controlling this part of the body. So as I walk, it's completely natural. The ankle just responds reflexively as my spinal cord used to control my calf muscle in the same fundamental way. So here's Steve Martin of Phoenix just demonstrating his extraordinary renewed capacity to traverse a very, very rough terrain. He just runs up this rocky path.
Oh my God.
And here's Lisa Marie after being fitted.
Oh my God, I can't believe it. It's just like I've got a real leg. Now don't start running.
Now turn around and do the same thing walking up. Walk up, get on your heel to toe like you would normally just walk on level ground. Try to walk right up the hill.
Oh my God.
They're pushing you up?
Yes, I'm not even, I can't even describe it.
It's pushing you right up.
When the body's fixed, the mind celebrates. It is not well appreciated, but over half of the world's population suffers from some form of cognitive, emotional, or physical condition. And because of poor technology, bad technology, these conditions often result in disability and a poorer quality of life. It's my view that basic levels of cognitive, emotional, sensory, and physical function should be a part of our human rights. Each person in the world should have the right to live without debilitating disability, if they so choose. To live without severe depression, for example. To see a loved one, in the case of seeing impaired. To walk, to dance, in the case of limb paralysis or amputation. To achieve these human rights, as a society, we need to embrace the basic proposition that people are not disabled, people are not broken, but rather our built environment, our technologies are disabled and broken. We, the people, need not accept our limitations, but can transcend disability through technological innovation. Through fundamental advances in human-machine interaction, we can eliminate disability in this century and set the technological foundation for an enhanced human experience. Indeed, the emergence of humans with machines and the elimination of disability will be one of the great narratives of this century. Thank you. So I'm very, very honored to introduce one of my great heroes in the world, Mr. Reinhold Messner. Reinhold is the foremost mountaineer in history. And he's decided to very graciously to join me on the stage and have a conversation. I think we're live.
Yes, yes, yes. No, I'm a great admirer now of your scientific work. There are many great climbers I admire. I know that you was a very good rock climber in your young years. You did this great ascent on Mount Washington, I think, where you lost your legs, not only your toes. And afterwards, I didn't hear about your climbing achievements, but now, knowing what you are doing as a scientist, the combination between being, having done your climbing achievements and now your scientific achievements, this combination is unique, I think, in the climbing world.
Yeah, thank you, thank you. It turns out that climbing vertical and overhanging rock and ice walls, you can actually adapt electromechanics and do it as well or better. It's wonderful. So I just had a blast reinventing my own body and returning to an even more advanced point in my sport.
Yeah, this is interesting because I personally lost my toes, partly of my toes, when I was 25, and I was not anymore a good rock climber afterwards. I was a specialist in rock climbing before, and since I lost these abilities in rock climbing, I lost also enthusiasm for rock climbing, and I became a high altitude climber. This was the reason. But you were able, with technology, to invent something that now you are a better rock climber than before. And I understand it, because knowing how rock climbing and especially ice climbing is functioning, I understand this is possible. But before seeing this lecture, I was not thinking that somebody losing his legs would climb on ice walls and rock walls like before.
Yeah, it's very non-obvious, but it's actually nice that I just didn't lose my toes, that I lost my leg the whole way up to here. Because from here down, I'm just a blank palette. I can create anything. And through that creation process, you can also imagine extending beyond what nature intended. You know, being on an ice wall and never having calf fatigue. Adjusting height. I can be any height I want to reach hand and footholds.
One question came up to me listening to the discussion before this discussion, and your speech. If human beings, generally speaking, have the time to learn, to behave with these new possibilities we have, with the computers, the danger of cyber wars and so on. And I think the greatest problem we have that we human beings learned in millions and millions of years, coming out of the animal bioside, of the bioside generally. And we had many years, we had millions of years to learn certain activities. But now we have only months or years, single years, to learn to behave with new possibilities. And I don't know, probably this possibility with the lack of the experience is on the end killing the human species of the world.
There are threats. So, you know, there's biological Darwinian forms of evolution, which is fairly slow. And what this is a rapid technological evolution. And because it's so rapid, I mean, these are very primitive compared to what they'll be 20 years from now. 20 years from now, they'll fully emulate, they'll augment. People with limitations will be running a lot faster and jumping a lot higher than a person with normal biological limbs. Because we're going to be hit by so many technological changes that affect our minds and bodies so fundamentally, there's nefarious means to which, of course, such technologies can be abused. So as we develop these technologies, we also need to develop sophistication and security policy. We need to be training more people in security, in my view.
I understand. But going in the brain is much more complicated than a leg. And if you interfere in the brain, in the human brain, which still is partly animal, not only human. And in our brain is the experience genetically founded, which is in the whole chain of evolution came out. The experience of we have today is the sum of millions of years of bioevolution. How we can go in there and do right, that we can go in the right direction. I have today, for example, personally the experience, or not the knowledge, because I'm not a scientist, but the feeling that the instinct part of my knowledge, which I have in my brain. It's more important for my behavior on difficult situations, in dangerous situations, on the mountains, in the big expeditions, than the intelligence, the pure intelligence, which is maybe human and maybe combined with our ability to speak, to communicate. But we have an intelligence which is functioning also without communication, which is functioning like it's functioning in a tree. And without this instinct, I would not be here. Without intelligence, I don't know.
Yeah, so I don't think anyone here would disagree with the goal of decreasing human suffering, allowing people with debilitating disability to move again, to see again, to live without debilitating anxiety or depression. And it's a lot of people, as I stated, with such conditions, half the world's population. So it's morally clear that it is unacceptable. We need to build a society where people are freed from the shackles of disability. How far we go beyond that, the danger is by treating that portion of our world population, you set the technological foundation for augmentation to go beyond what nature intended. And as we march beyond emulation of what we are, we need to be very, very careful. For example, if you have a means to correct for depression, really correct for it without few side effects through these optogenetic approaches, these electrical interface approaches. How depressed do you have to be to have the intervention? Do we want people to receive the intervention who are slightly depressed, who are producing perhaps great art, perhaps because they're slightly depressed from time to time? Or do we want to only use it when a person is suicidal? So these are very, very complex questions that we will have to address when these various technologies come on board.
I can put in a last question, a practical one. What is the cost of 2 legs like this? The real cost, not the cost somebody maybe has to pay in a hospital. If
the cost just to build, or
today, the cost of today, not the cost of evolution.
Just to purchase these, not to pay for the research.
Yeah, somebody goes.
So just very quickly, to get to these devices to this point in development cost about $43 million US for the research and development. To just purchase my legs, I'm about $120,000 man. I'm not $1 million man yet. But if you compound all the research, I'm a $50 million man or something.
So now many people can have an advantage of all the work you did, all the scientific work you did. Today many people, not many, but some people can do this intervention and go like before.
Yeah, ultimately, to solve this problem that some people in the world can afford very costly high-tech medical devices, and other people, for example, in Cambodia, are not able to afford such devices. Ultimately, we can solve that as a society with geographically distributed manufacturing, where local communities can build very high-tech things at very, very low cost. In that model, you throw out intellectual property, you have open source design, and that's a way to even the playing field.
I got a lot of inspiration today. I will not risk anymore some amputations myself, but in case of emergency, because it will happen again on Everest or somewhere on Mount McKinley, you know, the cold mountains, that people, they can, after their amputation, have the hope to be back on the street, to be back in their life, in their work, without having the feeling now life is gone. Many, many thanks for all
Thank you.
your
Thank
work,
you so much.
especially your
Thank you.
scientific work.